of it, but not able to say. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Sorry, did you give a question? Yes.
She asked part of it.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, 1, 2. Yeah.
How does this not bring up broader issues in everyday life if you see something on the left, or only on the left, and then can't communicate, just walking around?
Yeah, shouldn't that come up in everyday life? Well, I guess it usually doesn't, just because of that thing I said that our heads and eyes are moving the whole time. Yeah, and it's really only under these very controlled conditions that you get something showing up. I mean, if something just showed up for a couple of 100 milliseconds in your left, you really might get some effect where your right hand responds and your speech comes in only a bit later. Yeah, but partly I think there's a lot of confabulation that we do ordinarily. I mean, there are classic cases like people, you put your hand in a radiator, yeah? You take your hand away immediately when it's very hot, and you say, wow, that hurt. That's why I took my hand away. Now, when you measure people doing that kind of thing, what you find is that the reaction of jerking the hand away happened far too fast for signals to have gone up to the brain and then back down to generate the movement. The movement was a reflex that just came at a much lower level than being centrally controlled because of pain. You see what I mean? You can just show that. But nobody ever bats an eyelid about that. People say, well, I pulled my hand away because it hurt. Yeah? Nobody says, wow, why did I pull my hand away? I mean, we are, that's what I meant, that actually, that we are all much more like this patient than we might like to think. We tell ourselves these stories about why what we are doing is perfectly sensible the whole time. So even if it did turn out that there's quite a lot of what you mentioned going on, we would, I think, just confabulate in this kind of way and not even notice. Yeah. Yes. I'm sorry. That's not deliberate. I don't know why. Yeah, please.
I just want to ask about the key and ring thing. So
Yes, the key ring. Yeah.
The patient responds with ring, but does he actually know that he holds a key?
Does he actually know that he has the key? Yeah, that's a good question, isn't it? What's knowledge? I mean that seriously, actually. Does knowledge mean you have to be able to say? Yeah, I think it puts a lot of pressure on what we mean by knowledge, that issue. I mean, if you're doing an exam, yeah, then it doesn't really cut any ice to say, oh, well, I knew all the answers perfectly well. I just couldn't tell you any of them. Yeah, in an exam context, know just means you can say. Yeah? Or if you ask me, what time is it? Or what's your date of birth? And I say, oh, I know it perfectly well. I just can't tell you because of some rare brain deficit. It hardly makes sense. Yeah? But on the other hand, there are cases where it seems like we do talk about what you know, you knowing something, even though you couldn't say it. I must have known that there was somebody behind the door. That was why I didn't go out. You see what I mean? Something tipped me off that a burglar was hiding. I don't mean to sound too nervous here. Something tipped me off that there was a person behind that door, even though I couldn't have said. You see what I mean? Sometimes our behavior seems to be controlled by stuff that we couldn't have literally stated.
I think both hemispheres
Can think?
Yeah, and only the left controls that
Yeah.
bridge. So it's weird. I think the patient does know that he holds both a key and ring. He
Yeah.
can only express ring.
There's some sense, I think you're certainly right, that there must be some sense in which the patient knows that he's looking for a key. He has to look for a key. He knows that. Otherwise, why would he reach for the key? Yeah? He must know that the word key is there, even though he can't say. Yeah? So that's actually a perfect case of the kind of knowledge I was describing. Yeah. But your questions really put a lot of pressure on what we mean by knowledge or what we mean by thinking. And yeah, so it just needs some talking through. Yeah, behind you? Did you still have a question? Yes. Okay. Yes? Yes, sorry, you. Lady in the blue, yeah. I'm sorry, I thought you put up your hand, but perhaps you didn't. Okay. Yes, you. Yes. There must be something going wrong with my pointing. Let me. Yeah. If you move the key to the right, yep.
What did he just know? Can he enter the key?
He won't be able accurately to answer the key, yeah, because it really if you did this fast enough, yeah, in a controlled enough way, he might be able to get to say, well, he might be able to figure out, oh, it must have been a key. It must have been the key. That must have been what I was looking at. Yeah? Is that what you mean? Yeah. That would likely give him enough to figure out. That must have been the word I was looking at, since that's what I picked up. Yeah. Okay, yeah?
Just kind of a comment. I don't know. I'm having a really hard time understanding why these patients weren't able to notice more of a difference in their daily lives. I feel like in work and everything, you would be able to notice or realize that something was wrong, like typing on a computer or any kind of thing where you have to talk to people.
But why would that be? If you just think about typing, your eyes are moving like this. Yeah? So it's going from the left of your visual field to the right just the whole time as you're typing. You see what I mean? It's a very unusual situation to have somebody frozen for just a few hundred milliseconds staring at a fixation point here. Yeah, that's... Yeah. That and the confabulation. You might say, God, my typing's just not as good as it used to be. You see what I mean? But without necessarily focusing on anything. Yeah. Okay, quickly, and then one, two, and then we should move on. Yeah.
If they closed one eye then and were typing, would then they have difficulty?
No, because remember that it's not which eye, it's which half of the visual field, and both eyes get both halves of the visual field. Yeah. Yeah.
I just also remember reading that both sides control the neck. So if one feels that there's something to look at, they're able to move the neck really fast.
Yes, very good. Yes.
In everyday
Yeah.
life, it's not really an issue because both sides control the neck. They can both see what they want to look at.
Very good. I'd forgotten that, but that's certainly true. Yeah. Okay, good. Now the key point here is that we're talking about imagination and scientific explanation. And I hope it's clear there's a kind of gee whiz when you think about these patients. And the point is, you have no idea, you can't imagine what that experience is like. You can't put yourself into their shoes. You can't understand imaginatively what it's like from their point of view. The intriguing thing about them is that getting a scientific or functional explanation here of the kind I just gave is really almost childishly simple. I mean, you can objectively understand exactly what's going on. It's a little bit tricky keeping left and right straight, when you're working through it. But that's about as hard as it is, really. Yeah. Getting a scientific understanding here is not, in principle, all that difficult of how they're wired up and how they're going to behave. But then you ask yourself, so the scientific explanation is not, in principle, all that complex. Of course, there's endless complexity in the details, but the kind of thing we're getting here is not all that complicated scientifically. But then you ask, what's my imaginative understanding of who's in charge? The subjective life, the conscious life, that is making this patient do what they do. Well, you don't have that at all. You don't get any imaginative understanding of the CEO of the whole operation when you try and put yourself into this patient's shoes. Because what are you to imagine? What do you make of it when the patient looks at the screen? How do you imagine what the patient is seeing? Do you imagine just one half? Do you imagine the other half? Do you imagine them both? None of these is right. There isn't a way of getting an imaginative understanding of what the patient is seeing. You can't do it by imagining just one of these aspects, because, after all, the other part is playing a role in generating the patient's movements. You can't do it by getting both, because that's just what the patient doesn't have, a single unified conscious experience of both sides. There is no way you can get an imaginative understanding of what the patient is doing. So this is a very simple case, really, in which, on the one hand, it's pretty easy to get a good understanding of what's going on scientifically with the patient, but it seems thought-stoppingly impossible to get an imaginative understanding of what's going on here. Sperry himself said, instead of the normally unified single stream of consciousness, these patients behave in many ways as if they have two independent streams of conscious awareness, one in each hemisphere. And when this work first came out, there is a philosopher, Roland Puccetti, who my memory is, Puccetti said, actually, what this shows is that there are two different people in the split brain patient. And actually, when you think about it, each of us is two different people. You and I right now have two different people inhabiting the same body. It's just that they get on pretty well and they have a good communication because of the corpus callosum. This view has not survived the test of time. This is a crazy view, right? That can't be right, that there are two different people inhabiting your body. Whatever science has shown here is not that. There are two different people inhabiting the same body. But the great thing about Puccetti's view is that it was clear. If you don't say that, it's very difficult to know what to say here. And we don't want to say we're dealing with two different people just because of the thing that you guys have been raising. Their behavior is just as integrated in ordinary life as yours or mine. And it doesn't seem right to say only the right hemisphere has got the consciousness, because after all, it's the left hemisphere that's doing the talking and saying what they experience. But if you said, well, actually, only the left hemisphere has got the consciousness, the fact is the right hemisphere does lots of things like face recognition or emotional processing that you usually think is just essentially part of your conscious life. When you look around you, you're identifying faces, you're having emotional reactions to them. And that seems just deep in your conscious experience. So there's no problem about giving a functional description of these patients, how they're wired, what they'll do. That's what we just worked through. But what you can't get is a picture of what experience is like for them. Just one other thing here. There's this, in one of the videos, there are these Arcimboldo paintings, some of you might have seen them, of vegetables that are arranged to form faces. Yeah? And it's thought that the right